Alien's smartest scientific move is also its cruelest one. The disaster is not caused by ignorance of aliens. It is caused by ignoring quarantine in a sealed habitat. Ridley Scott's film arrived in 1979, and it still lands like a case study. Not because it predicts gadgets. It nails the logic of biological risk, under pressure, inside a spaceship. The setup is deceptively simple. The commercial towing vessel Nostromo diverts after its computer, Mother, detects a transmission. A working crew, not a research team, investigates. They find a derelict craft and a chamber of leathery eggs. One choice follows, and the rest is ecology. Start with that airlock scene, because it is the hinge. Kane is brought back with an organism attached to his face. Ripley refuses to open the door, citing quarantine protocol. She is right, scientifically, ethically, and operationally. You do not bring unknown biology into the same closed system that holds your air, water, food, and medical care. In real life, quarantine is not a vibe. It is a technology. It is how you buy time when you lack information. You isolate, you observe remotely, you set a chain of authority, and you avoid emotional improvisation. Alien understands why this fails. Dallas wants to save a crewmate. Lambert is panicking. The moment feels urgent and personal, so procedure looks cold. Ash overrides Ripley and opens the door, and the ship effectively becomes a petri dish. That leads to the next major insight. The creature is terrifying because it behaves like biology, not like a demon. It does not need revenge, ideology, or even obvious intelligence. It needs a life cycle. The stage sequence is the film's core idea. Egg, then facehugger, then implanted embryo, then chest burster, then adult. Each stage has a job. The egg is protection and deployment. The facehugger is host acquisition and implantation. The embryo is internal development. The chest burster is a dispersal juvenile. The adult is the mobile hunting stage that keeps the cycle going, or at least clears threats. That structure maps well onto something real on Earth. Parasitoids. A predator kills and eats. A parasite exploits over time. A parasitoid develops in a host and eventually kills it. The horror is not just attack. It is repurposing. A human body becomes a temporary habitat. Even the facehunter's behavior carries grim biological logic. It does not simply suffocate Kane. It appears to keep him breathing. It resists removal so aggressively that trying to pry it off could kill the host. Then it dies once implantation is complete, like a one-time reproductive apparatus that has spent its energy budget. That is exaggerated, but the underlying idea is coherent. Evolution favors function, not comfort. Now for the big scientific break, the one you can almost feel the movie stepping around. The chestburster grows into a towering adult far too quickly. Conservation of mass and energy is not optional. Tissue has to be made from atoms, and the assembly takes energy. A small juvenile cannot become something human-sized without a massive input of raw materials. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, salts, trace metals, water, all of it has to come from somewhere. So does the energy to build muscle, armor-like surfaces, and a complex skeleton-like structure. On Earth, fast growth happens, but it happens by eating a lot, photosynthesizing, or exploiting chemical gradients. Alien does not show enough feeding, heat output, waste, or oxygen draw to make that growth plausible. You can patch it in your head. Maybe it raids stored food, maybe it eats plastics, insulation, lubricants, or even human remains. The ship is full of organics and polymers, but the film keeps the camera on fear, not on metabolism. As biology, the growth is the least defensible part of the life cycle, because it asks you to forget accounting. The second major stretch is host compatibility. Kane is clearly not the creature's native host, yet the embryo develops successfully. That is evolutionarily convenient to a suspicious degree. Parasites are often tuned to specific hosts or a narrow host range. They have to match attachment sites, immune defenses, temperature, chemistry, and timing. Human physiology is finicky. Our immune system is built to recognize foreign proteins, damaged cells, and abnormal tissue environments. Even human pregnancy requires sophisticated immune negotiation, and that happens within one species. So how does an alien embryo avoid inflammation, clotting, fever, and immune attack, while also extracting nutrients and growing? The film gives you no mechanistic bridge. It simply works, perfectly on first contact. There is one plausible escape hatch, and the story almost points at it. The eggs are in a derelict craft, arranged like cargo. The warning signal implies intent. That makes it reasonable to suspect the organism is not a naturally evolved parasite that got lucky. It could be engineered, selected, or weaponized for broad host compatibility. That does not make it easy, but it moves the premise from miraculous coincidence toward deliberate design. Then there's the most iconic chemical idea in the movie, acid blood. Dramatically, it is genius. Tactically, it changes everything. Hurt the organism, and you might breach your own ship. Scientifically, acid is doing a lot of work. Strong acids are not universal solvents. Different materials resist different corrosives. A fluid that burns through multiple decks quickly would likely be more than a simple acid. It might be a reactive oxidizer, a fluorinating agent, or a multi-part system that becomes corrosive when exposed to air or mixed upon injury. The deeper paradox is biological containment. If the circulatory fluid is that destructive, what are its vessels made of? How does it survive micro-tears, routine stress, or even growth without dissolving itself? Earth life does store harsh chemistry, like stomach acid and venom, but it relies on compartmentalization and controlled release. The more reactive the chemistry, the harder it is to package inside living tissue. You can imagine science fiction fixes. Maybe the fluid is stable until it contacts oxygen. Maybe two harmless components mix when the creature is wounded. Maybe it uses enzymes that attack specific industrial materials. The film stays silent, and that silence preserves the myth. Chemistry becomes part of the horror. Now zoom out to the environment, because Alien is also unusually astrobiological in its restraint. The planetoid looks bleak and apparently lifeless. The real biological site is not an open jungle. It is a hidden chamber, possibly artificial, possibly sealed. That instinct is closer to modern thinking than many colorful alien worlds. Habitability is local. Life may exist underground, under ice, in protected chemical niches near energy gradients, or inside engineered habitats. A dead-looking surface does not rule out biology. It just shifts the question to where conditions are stable enough for complex chemistry over time. Still, the egg chamber raises its own questions. Dormancy is real. Seeds, spores, cysts, and eggs can persist. But long-term survival faces radiation damage, molecular decay, desiccation, and temperature stress. A room full of large, viable eggs implies shielding, maintenance, exceptional stability, or technology. That again nudges you toward the idea that the derelict is a storage system or a containment failure, rather than a natural nest on a barren world. Once the organism is aboard, the film's most realistic ecological model clicks into place. The xenomorph behaves like an invasive species inside a simplified ecosystem. A spacecraft is not a wilderness. It is an engineered habitat with low redundancy. A small number of failures can cascade into total collapse. The alien exploits that. Vents become corridors. Compartments become ambush sites. Every search effort risks spreading danger through the ship. The crew also suffers the classic first contact handicap. They do not know the organism's sensory range, metabolism, vulnerabilities, or reproduction status. That ignorance is itself a risk factor. In real invasions, the earliest phase is often the hardest, because nobody knows which variables matter yet. Finally, Alien makes a point many science stories avoid. Institutions can be more dangerous than organisms. Mother's secret order and Ash's behavior reveal that the company values the organism as an asset. The crew is expendable. That is not a supernatural twist. It is a governance model. When incentives reward ownership, secrecy, speed, and strategic advantage, safety gets reframed as an obstacle. In that world, quarantine is not just hard emotionally, it is hard politically. Ash turns policy into action, opening the airlock, protecting the specimen, and shaping decisions toward capture rather than containment. So where does that leave the creature itself, as a piece of speculative biology? Overpowered? Yes. The adult seems optimized for strength, stealth, climbing, and resilience all at once. Real organisms pay trade-offs. Armor costs mass. Speed costs energy and heat dissipation. Large predators leave footprints in oxygen use, waste, and heat. A sealed ship should notice. Yet the design communicates something true. It looks functional. Specialized limbs, a tail, protective surfaces, and that infamous inner jaw all signal adaptation for close-quarters ambush in dark structural spaces. Even in the details strain biology, the organism feels shaped by selection pressures, not by magic. Remember the implication. First contact is not primarily a language problem. It is a contamination problem, and the scariest monster is often the decision to let it in.